just like ask them, what is Surah Al-Baqarah about? What are the themes of Baqarah? And there are clear themes in Baqarah, and there's actually, according to people like Diyauddin al-Biqa'i, who was a 9th century scholar from Lebanon, and Imam Suyuti made this argument, Ibn Zubair and others, there are actually very clear structures to these surahs that can be discerned after great reading. And Fakhruddin al-Razi says that this is something that very few people ever penetrate, because the Quran demands a type of tadabbur. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Don't they reflect on this Quran deeply? Tadabbur is to take something to its end, to penetrate and go to the end. And the Quran can never be penetrated, but here it means to delve deeply into the Quran, to really try to understand it. And so this is one of the things that is very important for the ummah, is to restore this relationship with the Quran. مَجْتَمَعَ قَوْمٌ فِي بَيْتٍ مِّن بِيُوتِ اللَّهِ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَيَتَدَارَسُونَهُ بَيْنَهُم. That no group of Muslims gathers in a house of the houses of Allah to recite the Quran. But then it says يَتَدَارَسُونَهُ, and tadarus in Arabic, tafa'ul, is where they study it together. And one of the things I think that's, you should always have, it's good to have somebody who's more knowledgeable than other people in a situation, and this is why you need scholars. But at the same time, we have to get out of this utter dependence on the scholar. We ourselves have to be actively engaged in learning. And if we don't do that, it becomes a very passive experience, so that people never really actively move to understand the Book of Allah. And the Quran demands that people reflect on it. It tells us to reflect on the Quran and think about it and study it and study its ayahs. So that's very important. One of the great mufassirun of our tradition, Ibn Juzay al-Kalbi, he actually gave a beautiful summation of the Quran. And he said that the Quran, if you want to know, like if you ask somebody, what is the purpose of the Quran? Like, what could we reply? People will come up with different things, but he actually gave a beautiful definition of the Quran. He said that it was da'wat al-khalq ila ibadat al-haq. Right? And so it's calling creation to worship the Creator, meaning humans and jinn, to worship the Creator and to enter into His deen. So he says but that itself, that purpose, then demands two things. The first is, what is that ibadah? Like, what are we being called to? And then, what are the incentives for entering into that deen? And he says that also is further divided. He says that the ibadah is two. It's your understanding and it's your practice. So there, like all things, we have theory and practice. So it's your understanding, it's changing your understanding about the world, about God. This is the metaphysical component in the Quran, which has really, I mean, there's a basic Islam that you need to understand, that it's enough of a person if they just come into Islam, and we have a Sahabi that did this, who came into Islam, went into battle, and he died. And so it was enough for him to know the most basic thing about Allah, that there's no God but Allah. La ilaha illallah. Right? There's no God but Allah. And at the most fundamental level, Surah Al-Ikhlas, which is one of the extraordinary gifts of this ummah, is Surah Al-Ikhlas, because it takes a very common person, if they have an understanding of that one surah, they really have a theologian's understanding of their Lord, because the 8 things that it negates, and this is called the via negativa in the West, which is it's a lahut salbi, like negative theology, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, it negates that He's more than one. Allahu Samad, it negates that he has any need of anything. And then lam yalid wa lam yulad, it negates causation. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is neither caused, nor is he a direct cause of something like a cause and effect relationship to creation. So he doesn't have that relationship of a type of cause and effect, even though we say that he's the cause of the world, but it's not in a cause and effect relationship, and this gets people out of the problem of the eternity of the universe, because the cause is always related to the effect. And then lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad, it negates any likeness to God, any nadhir of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.